Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of Passions. And today we have a musical treat for you, actually. Today I'm joined by Sarah Moule, who is a wonderful singer, and I know because I've checked her out on YouTube, a beautiful voice. So, but, you know, without further ado, Sarah, you can do a lot better job than I can about talking about yourself. So tell us who you are, what you do, and what your passion is.
Well, I am Sarah Moule. I am a jazz singer, and I mostly record songs. Up to now, 5 albums of songs written by one of the great lyricists, jazz lyricist, Fran Landesman, who's actually has died 10 years ago this month, and Simon Wallace. I'm married to Simon, and I found the songs and Fran and Simon at the same time, and I've been singing their songs for 18 years. That's how long I've been gigging, and I'm going to start a new album. Actually, that's my next thing. That the last one's out, next one begins.
Absolutely fabulous. So how did you get into singing? Were you in that genre? Did you start in that genre, or was it singing in the shower and thought, I've not got a bad voice, you know, when you were 10 years old? What's the story?
Well, we sang a lot at home, 5 kids. My dad is from Lancashire, my mum too, and I would say that's quite a singing culture, I think. But certainly, you know, that's my mum's family sang, my dad's family sang, put that together, you got a heck of a noisy brood. And we used to sing at home, folk songs. And I just loved it. I loved singing. I always loved singing. I came from an academic family, though, so that was never even discussed as a possibility of going forward. It was, oh, you're going to study French then, you know. So I did. But I always knew, even when I was doing my degree, I didn't ever think of being a singer. But as soon as I left university, the only thing I knew I wanted to do was join a band. But I'd never really thought it was necessarily possible. Sounds strange, but I didn't do a gig as myself anywhere until I was 32.
Gosh.
Took me a long time. Yeah, I did lots of music, but all either recording songs for people, and then I did backing vocals, and then I couldn't not do it anymore, is the only way to put it. I had to do it. And I told myself the first night, it was down the Fulham Road in London, in a pub, very few people in there, with a piano player, a really good piano player from the Royal College of Music. So I started with fantastic musicians. I said to myself, if they throw things, I won't do this. And in fact, these 2 Spanish people stood up at the end and clapped. And I thought, that's a good start.
That was the moment, was it? That was the special moment.
Well, that's when I thought, okay, they didn't throw things and they stood up and clapped. That's really good. So it went from there, really.
Well, you've for what it's worth, you've obviously lost the Lancashire accent then, because being a Mancunian as I am, I'm kind of very familiar with Lancashire, which, as I'm sure you know, is just up the road from me here.
Yes.
And it's not quite the same accent that I'm hearing today.
No, my mum and I was born in the south. They left before I was born. So they came down to Bexhill-on-Sea in Sussex with 3 kids, and I was born down there, and then my little brother came along. But amazingly, my mum and dad never came to see the town before my dad took the job. He just thought, this is a good job, it's head teacher's job. And they came, which is amazing. I find that incredible. He took the job and moved his family, and without even seeing the town. But they figured it couldn't be more polluted than Accrington at the time. You know, it would be fresh air, and indeed it was on the coast. And, you know, my dad died during the pandemic last year at 98.
Gosh.
But yeah, fantastic. And, you know, it was very sad, but a good death. And I was able to be there, and my mum is still there. She's 92. So it was a good move for them.
It was, absolutely. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because now we kind of think nothing of moving 200 or 300 miles or even further for our careers and our work. But I guess in those days, that wasn't very common to leave your home Town,
I
was
don't
it?
think so. They very rarely went back. They went back if there was a phone call in the middle of the night and it was very serious. People just didn't travel in the same way. Even if they could, they still kind of didn't. And so they came. So I don't really know. A lot of my cousins up north, I didn't have that huge family, but we were pretty close knit. 5 kids and parents. We were pretty close knit within ourselves, really.
And then, and did you? So you obviously you were singing, I suppose, for fun, I guess, in the earlier days. And did you pick up on jazz relatively early, or were you experimenting with the Beatles or anything else like it at the time?
Well, I wasn't really doing any singing in my teens, apart from what we did at home. There were a couple of bands in the town, but I was quite shy, really lacking in confidence, about it. Didn't even cross my mind, though I think I did want to do backing vocals for one of the rock bands, but I went out with a bass player instead, and that's the pattern that developed. Is my boyfriends through the years were often musicians, and I can't explain it myself, really, because when I look back now, I think you're crazy. You should have been doing it 20 years before you were. And it's really rare for someone who starts late to be any good. Actually, that's the truth.
Wow, that's interesting.
I hope I hope I'm just an exception to that. Because it's a very late start. But I started with musicians of a really high caliber. The band were all ex-Royal College and Guildhall, Royal College of Music. So I started with great players. I'm not really answering your question. I wasn't into jazz. I was into Neil Young and David Bowie.
David Bowie. Oh, now that's taken the interview on a completely different journey. That has, Sarah.
Yeah. But,
massive fan.
Well, I think when he died, we all realised that we were all massive fans, even if we didn't know it, because we were all so sad.
True.
It was such a sad day. But his piano player for the last 20 years is a jazzer. It's a jazz piano player.
Is that Nick Garson, is it?
Yeah. Mike Garson.
Was
a serious jazz pianist, and Bowie was into that. So there's, especially Black Star, there's loads of, it's really interesting music. Well, it was all interesting, but right to the end, it was really interesting.
And has your voice developed then over the years? I mean, I guess it has. I guess its natural maturity or change of a voice will happen over time. Is that the case with you?
It is. It's funny because I have recently listened to something I made 20 years ago, and I still recognize it as me, and the voice is not that different, but the singing is very different. The delivery and the intention is just different. But I had 2 great singers, Claire Martin, fantastic. Claire Martin OBE, I should say, now a fantastic jazz singer. She got me into jazz, really, though I kind of was heading that way. I took lessons with her for probably 3 years, maybe longer. And then I did voice production, singing, scales and arpeggios, with the head of opera at the Royal College of Music. I took private lessons for 4 years, maybe 5 with him.
Wow.
But we never worked on opera. Classical singers don't like to mess with other genres because you can interfere with someone musically if you try and impose things on them. So we just did scales and arpeggios for years and years. But that was a fantastic classical training.
It's a strange thing, really, that as fans of music, as most of us are, we all tend to be. There's this, when you talk about that and you talk about the depth and breadth that there is behind music is fascinating. To somebody like me, which is basically really a bit of a, dare I use the term, ignoramus. I just listen to it and I think I like that. Yeah. And then but there's obviously nuances and different levels and layers in that whole musical journey compared with the layman who just hears the sound and either likes it or doesn't?
I think either it resonates with you as a listener, and if it does, there's something in it that's good, no matter what it is, all kinds of music. If it resonates, it's doing its job, because it's about communication. And the other stuff, I think musicians probably listen in a different way, because they're realizing how they got that sound, or whether it's to a click track, or whether the time is coming and going, it speeds up and slows down. Just listening differently, I would say, but it moves you or it doesn't move you. That's really the only that's all that matters, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, okay, so we're going to have a treat now, aren't we? We're going to actually play a track. I've been looking forward to this bit all the whole time. We're going to play a track of yours, Stormy Emotions. Would you like to just introduce the track then, Sarah, and a bit about it?
Okay, well, it's the title track of my 5th album. It's the last track on the album, and it was the first song that Simon Wallace and Fran Landesman ever wrote together. And there's a whole story in there, which I might come to later on. Well, I hope you like it. I don't want to say any more. I hope people like it. I hope it means something to them.
Okay. Well, without further ado, then, let's listen to Stormy Emotions by you, Sarah Moule.
Can the long arm of love reach your untouchable heart? Can it conquer your defenses, overcome your tough pretenses? Don't you really want it to? Will the warm lips of love melt your preoccupied mind? Will you halt your nervous action and surrender to attraction? Can anyone get close to you? Can love distract you from your high-tech toys and show you there are better games for girls to play with boys? Will the long arm of love wrap and entrap you tonight? Will love enter your world and ignite some unreachable part? Can love distract you from your high-tech toys and show you there are better games for girls to play with boys? Will the long arm of love wrap and entrap you tonight? Will love enter your world and ignite some unreachable part to the utter delight of your bright, untouchable heart?
Oh, Sarah, honestly, I'm not just saying it. That was wow.
Thanks.
That was wow. Seriously. I mean, one of the wonderful things about doing what I do, and particularly this Passions channel with Spencer, is you come across people and you come across scenarios that you wouldn't normally come across, you know. And that is a great example of, so obviously as a result of this, my playlist increases all the time. So yeah, we've done Tom Seals and various people on the music, but that was just an absolute treat.
Oh, thank you.
How do you find watching yourself? Do you not mind, or is it like, oh, I'm not sure?
No, I'm okay with it now, because when we were recording my third album, I started to like my singing. I started to hear the stuff that was good, which is incredibly important. You have to like what you do, otherwise your ego just gets in the way in a negative way. I teach singing, and something that I have to tell people is they have to find something they like. And one of the great British saxophonists, Alan Barnes, was round in our studio. That was our studio that you saw in the video recording. I was lucky. I always liked what I did. I always liked the sound that came out. I always liked how I played. And he said that really helps you move forward. And I just thought, yeah, he's right. And I like my singing, but it's not to say I don't see how I can improve it. But I'm at peace with it, you know, and I'm doing my best, and I can see the good in it and hear the good in it. That's a live recording. That's actually a live version of one of the tracks from the album. We made a dozen. Another thing we did, as soon as we finished the album, we started making videos of them, and they're all live. That's not actually Stormy Emotions. That's called The Long Arm of Love, that song.
Oh, sorry. Is that the album?
Yeah, that's our branding, was Stormy Emotions.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
We tried to get in all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
A Long Arm of Love, but I agree, it's a really tender, hopeful song, and that's what I wanted the album to be. I wanted to make a piece of work that was uplifting, because the previous album was really edgy, and it is a good piece of work, I think. But I wanted to make something, luckily, that was more uplifting than anything else. You know, and as it happened, we then went into COVID, the whole pandemic. So I'm glad I wasn't doing a really gloomy project.
Yeah.
You know, it hit a good nerve for people, is what I would say.
Yeah.
But you always, you know, you can't help but hear your work or look at your work and see where you can improve it. But you have to like it overall.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I'm having interviewed a lot of what you might call, in inverted commas, high achievers over the years. I think that's a characteristic that you see in most of them, if not all of them, is that ever evolving need to just tweak it that little bit or make it that little bit better. And funnily enough, we're recording this, aren't we, at the end of July 2021, and the Olympics are on at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of scenario, isn't it, where they have to be just absolutely perfect in terms of, you know, those dives that have to be almost millimeters one way or another to win.
Yeah.
You know,
utter focus. But the different thing with music and the arts, I think, is so brutal in sport, because by the time you're 35, say, you're old. Whereas in music, you're often hitting a really rich scene, because, you know, you've grown up a bit, and perhaps not in pop, because pop is still pretty young, but in lots of other genres of music, you can get old and you can still get better, and hopefully you will keep getting better. I think if you get complacent, you've probably come to the end of your particular rope. Do you know what I mean? You know, if you think I can't get better, you're probably not going to get better.
Yeah, very true. And I think it's also interesting, I think, how taste changes. So if I look at my really quite teenage self, you know, that sort of music was the sort of music that you're doing, was the sort of stuff that my mum and dad would listen to. Nana Muscuri and all,
Oh,
Perry
yeah.
Como and all that lovely stuff. And I loved it. I did like it, but as a teenager, it's not very edgy and it's not very Sex Pistols. Let's put it that way, is it?
Yeah.
But then you grow up and you grow older, and now I listen to that. And I just think that's the sort of stuff that I just love listening to. And I've found myself now doing what a lot of people do when they get to a certain age and thinking, I wish they'd turn that down a bit. I wish they'd go to a pub. Wish they'd turn that down a bit. It's a bit loud, that music, and thinking I'm turning into my dad.
Yeah, well, I agree with you on the loudness in pubs. I think that's to get people to drink, isn't it? I always thought if you shout, then you have to drink more, and then you have the peanuts. I think that's part of getting people to drink. I think pop music it's of its time. Like for me, Starman, I know exactly where I was sitting when I first heard David Bowie sing Starman. It was on the steps of my friend's council house, and I felt like he was up there for me. And that's what's so important about pop, is it's the time and the place in your life. And that's why we still love those songs that we loved when we were kids. But they have a different, they had a resonance for us with our lives, whether or not we think they're good music still or our taste change. We always have a soft spot.
I think it just becomes nostalgia. After a while, it just becomes nostalgia, and we all love nostalgia, don't we?
Yeah.
Nowadays?
Yeah, but I don't think any of the music I liked when I was young was bad. I think it all had something relevant, even relevant to the time. Punk definitely did. I went to loads of punk gigs on Hastings Pier, and though I wasn't gobbing and pogoing, and I'd had to take my flares in and make them into drainpipe jeans, it's still really vivid, the excitement of those gigs, and it was an important part of my growing up.
Well, it also reminds you of the days, and I remember, having fights with my dad about the fact that I wanted to dye my hair orange, which was when I had hair back in the day. But that's nostalgia for you when I look back having hair. And I remember, that whole thing about having fights with my dad. I want to dye my hair orange, and him going, "You've absolutely no flipping chance of not doing that." No. And all that. And something funny as well is that I've been a couple of times in Manchester to see a tribute band to David Bowie, a tribute singer who's looks very much like David Bowie. And the first time I went to this tribute gig, I walked in and I looked around and I thought, there's a lot of old people in here.
Yeah.
And I suddenly thought, in fact, I said to my wife, you know what? I'm looking around thinking there's a lot of old people in here, and then you suddenly realise I'm one of those old people.
Oh God, it's a terrible realisation. But I hope Bowie's music still resonates for people today. Now you can meet people now who, even at a music college, who haven't heard of the Beatles. I mean, that's we never thought that would happen. But my husband teaches on a degree course, and he has met students who for whom the Beatles is totally meaningless. So maybe even that music, which is possibly some of the best pop songs, probably the best pop songs ever written, maybe that they are time sensitive in some way.
Well, it happens with my kids. I want to put something on the radio, in the car, on the Spotify or whatever, and I'll say, oh, I've listened to this, something like Depeche Mode or Tia Sophia's or David Bowie or whatever, and they go, Dad, turn this off, it's rubbish,
But when they get a bit older, I think they might get into that kind of music, or different kinds of music, because the difference between, for us, you had to spend a lot of money on an album. You went and you bought an LP and you just looked at it and read it and you knew every inch of the cover. And it was almost a ritual. I remember sitting down by the record player, just looking at a Thin Lizzy album, and I knew every part of it and every part of the record as well, of the music. And that doesn't really happen when you track hop. It's not it's not conducive to listening in that way. But vinyl's coming back, and our son's 21, and he now listens to incredible variety of music. You know, we pushed him towards Pink Floyd and stuff like that, but he's listened to stuff we don't know, and really old stuff, because it never goes away is the point now. It's all there, and the tribal thing that we had is much harder to find, because it was just there. You know, you were into glam rock or you were into T-Rex, you know, and you had a tribe. Whereas I don't think youngsters now, they just got everything, and it's harder to identify with.
That's so true. I've had that same conversation with my wife, exactly the same. I've said I feel very grateful that I grew up in the age I did of music, the 70s and 80s in particular. And you just hit the nail on that. And I've said that to her, actually. You were in a tribe, weren't you?
Yeah,
you know, in a genre, and you felt very much like, because you dressed like them, you played their music, you bought their music, and but I don't think that's the case anymore. I don't believe that's the case, as you said.
I think it might be for some, like you still see goths around, but they have to really go and look for it. It's just different. It's different for kids now. Nothing is old, actually. It just never goes away. Therefore, it's meaningless when it was made. It's a different thing. You know,
it is. It was like that feeling of excitement when you went down to a music shop to buy an LP, you know, a vinyl LP, and you knew it was coming out, and you actually I got on the bus at the time.
You waited.
And you got on the bus, and I was so excited to go in and actually get this album, this physical record. But I think kids are missing out when they don't have that experience in the same way.
Well, they are, but maybe I think musicians have cottoned onto it, because there's quite a lot of purchase in vinyl now, but it's very expensive to produce. I've not made a vinyl since I've been making albums. I haven't made a vinyl album, but I think when you find your real fan base, then you can begin to think it's going to cost you like £15 to make, you know, to press, plus all the artwork. Yeah, it's expensive to make, so you've got to kind of pretty much know you're going to sell them. But it was more expensive relatively, I think, when we were young. They're probably the equivalent of about 25 quid a pop, or even more. And it was treasure. You know, I didn't have a lot of albums, but I loved the albums I had. You know,
is Spotify key to, you know, Spotify, Apple Music, these sorts of things? Are they key for you in your market, or is it not as relevant?
I think in the wider sense it is, because people do discover you. But I kind of espouse the thing is that you have to go and look for people. So I contact people on Twitter. If they like the music, I will start a conversation. And I do believe that if you can find your 1,000 super fans, you can make a living.
Yes.
You know, I've come to it. I didn't start that way. But I think the music business, which is kind of different from music as a creative process, it's a business, is a different beast now. You can be a musician, you can make a living. It's really hard, but you have to find your fans. You find 1,000 people who will buy your music. That's 10,000 quid if you sell it for £10.
Yeah,
you know, that's a new way that we're all finding out how to, you know. And you do sessions online, and you do bespoke tracks. There's a whole kind of new thing that all musicians are kind of adopting. There's Patreon. But it's all good, but it's very different from, you know, how it used to be, you know, when there were gatekeepers who stopped you making a record if they wouldn't sign you up. Anyone can make a record now. And so there's an awful lot of good, and there's an awful lot of actually really pretty mediocre music to sift through.
Yeah. I'm just about to start an online radio station. That would have been impossible just a few years ago. that would have been impossible.
Mm.
And it's quite interesting, actually, because some of the guests I'm going to have on, which I might ask you to be on it, actually. So don't be surprised if you get another email.
I'd love to.
But I'm asking people that they're going to be guests on the shows is to come up with 5 tracks, five music tracks that are the most inspirational or motivational that they've got in their history of music. And it's been fascinating to see, because they obviously, first of all, it's quite a challenge to come up with only 5.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it's been almost like a catalyst for some of them to start exploring, going back through their playlists to remind themselves of the music that they love. And they've said it. I had no idea this is what it was going to do. It was going to set fire to my music interests again. You know, it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, Spotify and all that are great because you can discover, music you never would discover on your own. It's not all bad, but the remuneration aspect is definitely weighted towards the record companies and Spotify itself. And I think if everybody isn't getting a fair share, there's something wrong with that business model, and people will flock, as they have, to Bandcamp, which is, basically people can pay as much as they want. People can pay you £10,000 for a single if they wish. And it's far more, it's better for musicians, but it's not the same kind of shop front. So I think it's early days for all that. But I think it's wrong that I get 0.002 pence for a download on Spotify. Because why should it be so little? I can't work that one out.
There's been a lot of debate about this recently, hasn't there? Sorry?
Yeah, someone's making money off it, now. It's been taken to everybody. Anyone who's involved in anything creative is getting ripped off by it. And it's been taken to Parliament, but I don't know. I don't know if they've come out, should be 50-50 basically, to the music makers, songwriters, blah, 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 and that platform. I can't really see why it should be so low. It takes 1 million streams to make £1,000.
I don't think even the consumer, I don't think, would disagree with you on that.
No, they wouldn't. Which is why once people have found Bandcamp, they can have people can email you direct, and they can have a relationship with the people who are making the music they like, and that's fantastic for everybody, because that's what you want with your fans. You want to be able to communicate with them and have them communicate with you, and sometimes people collaborate with their fan base. I know people who've done collaborative songs. There's all kinds of new ways of doing things that are much fairer. I just don't understand why somebody should be getting 99.9% and somebody should be getting 0.1%. In fact, it's not even 0.1%. It's 0.02%.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's not sustainable.
I don't buy it. It's not good business. Anyway, we could go on about that for a long time, but there are alternatives to that now.
Yeah, which is a good thing. Okay, then. So to conclude, you've obviously, we're recording this at the end of July 2021. I think you've got obviously had to go through what many, if not all, artists have had to go through COVID and the lack of performance opportunities and such, like, at least in real venues. So what have you got coming up then in the next, that you know about over the next 9 months or so, that is going to help you to get back out there, as it were?
Yeah, well, I've got gigs. In fact, this week I've got 2 gigs, which is great. One in Eastbourne, one in London. We just launched the album. That was fabulous to do a launch gig. It came out in Feb and May, hard copy and download, and we launched end of June. That was the earliest date we could do a launch, when the venues opened. I'm doing jazz clubs around the country. Everything is on my website, sarahmoule.net. But we are going to start start doing live stream again in September. I think we just wanted a little break over the summer, as we've been doing them for 5 months. So we'll be back on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and Twitch, gaming platform.
Goodness me.
Yeah,
Very
I know.
modern.
But we do get a few views on Twitch, and they must be very bemused gamers stumble across these old people doing music. But it's so intimate.
Yeah.
Live streaming is a new thing, but it's very intimate because people can talk to you as you perform. So it's not the sterile thing I thought it would be, really. So we're doing gigs, and I'm hoping to start gigging abroad. That's my next thing, is I want to do things outside the UK as well as in the UK. But you can always find what we're doing, sarahmoule.net. I'm on Twitter and I'm on Facebook and I'm on YouTube channel. People can find out if they're interested in what we're
Wonderful.
up to. Yeah.
And
including
what countries would you say are most likely to be bigger fans? I'm sure there's, music is music, but is there a certain countries that you think would be on fire in comparison with others in terms of interest, demand?
For jazz, German people love jazz because they are extremely broad-minded. The Japanese love jazz. Chinese buy something like 1,000 pianos a week were being sold, so they like jazz and they can really deal with the kind of what some people think of that sounds like Les Dawson. Chinese people, it sounds perfectly, that's normal, because it's atonal, they have atonal music.
Yeah.
I want to go to Ireland because I think they would like what we're doing. It's not very far and it's a music country. They love music in Ireland. And I've got antecedents on both sides. So I've got places to go and look at, So that's where I want to go.
It's funny listening to that track as a layman, as I said, listening to that track I played, I just thought it was a beautiful ballad. I never really thought of it as being jazz as such, even though I guess it is jazz, is it? But as somebody who's an ignoramus, as I said, to me, it just sounded like a beautiful ballad sung by a great singer.
Thank you. It is a beautiful ballad, but the harmony, the chords that the song is written upon are definitely jazz chords. I mean, I'm not doing a lot of improvisation, though I'm not singing it exactly as it was written. So there is improvisation, but I introduce a lot of new songs. So I'm not going to be Scooby-Doodly-boodling over them. I'm not going to be scatting over them because I want people to hear the song and the words.
Sure.
But there is stuff on the album that is more easily recognizable as jazz. But I would say it's modern songs written about contemporary life above all, really. She was great. There's lots to say about Fran, the lyricist. Amazing woman. But maybe for another time. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we can do that on the radio station that you've agreed in public to
I'd
be
love
on.
to. I'm looking forward to that already.
Fabulous. Well, there you go then. So I will contact you. So start thinking then about those 5 tracks that are the most inspirational or motivational, and you can only have 5. Don't ask me for 6 or 7 as some have tried it on. It's 5.
All right. I'll try and get 5. Thank you.
Sarah, thanks very much for joining me today on Passions. It's been an absolute joy and an absolute pleasure. And thanks for sharing your music. And thanks for introducing me to something new in my life and in my artistic life. And I'll be enjoying a lot more of your tracks moving forward too. Thank you.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.